From kindergarten to high school graduation, students spend over 15,000 hours in the classroom. From the time they're 5 years old learning the ABCs till they're 18 and they can legally go into the military. And yet after all that time, most are leaving school not knowing how to manage a budget, handle emotional stress, communicate effectively, how to have healthy relationships, or even understand what career path or what might interest them to do after school. So this video is going to discuss why half the shit we are teaching our kids is pretty much a waste, and what we should be teaching them instead, and a better, more balanced path forward. So let's first start off by me asking you some simple questions. What are the phases of mitosis? And how are you finding the circumference of that circle? What are the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, and what was the central theme of Beowulf? Well, like me, you probably forgot a lot of that stuff too, and it's just like, how much are we actually remembering? And there's this thing called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, which says that people forget about 90% of what they learn within a week, unless they use it regularly. Forget about a month or a year, 5 to 10 years. US adults are struggling to answer basic questions from high school reading, math, and history, not because they're necessarily stupid, but just because if you don't use it, you lose it. Adult life doesn't require, recalling algebraic formulas or reciting the events of the 1800s. Instead, people are working so they can make money, they can buy food, afford soccer and Nintendo Switches for their kids, and doing all this while you can try to balance the stress of being an adult. So it's like, while the next batch of kids is getting their head, pumped full of useless information, the last batch is pretty much unlearning it and then scrambling to learn what they should have already been taught. Recognizing an anxiety attack, or more financial stuff like what a paycheck looks like and how to save up for retirement with a 401k. And turns out only 17% of US adults can pass a basic financial literacy quiz, something that's needed for life as an adult. The point is the curriculum provided to kids today is outdated. Instead of learning French history in the 1600s, maps and rocks, what should we be teaching instead? So I'm going to give off 4 skills that I believe should be taught in schools to have better, healthier adults. Starting with 1, emotional regulation. According to the CDC, over 1 in 5 children in the United States experience a mental health disorder in a given year. Now, there's some things that we can do to combat this, and one of them is what are these programs I've never heard of until doing some research, called these social emotional learning programs, SELs. Now, they're not widespread, but there are a couple, and this is what they work on. Kids learn self-awareness, understanding their thoughts and emotions, recognizing their strengths and weaknesses. In these programs, they also learn relationship skills, communication, teamwork, conflict resolution, and how to maintain healthy relationships. Social awareness cues as well. They learn empathy and compassion. And another one, they learn responsible decision making, how to think ethically, analyzing consequences, and how to make more thoughtful choices. Can you imagine if we were taught that in schools? And apparently kids that go through these programs improve academic outcomes by 11% on average. And of course, they have higher emotional intelligence, or EQ, have better relationships, actually earn more money, and experience less stress long term. In other words, they have a more satisfying life. So what are the consequences of not learning these things? Well, most adults don't know how to regulate their emotions just because they were simply never taught. Instead of learning awareness or resilience or some of these other skills, we learn to cope in other ways. We escape by scrolling on social media, spending more money with one-click purchases on Amazon, or medication. And it makes you kind of wonder, there's money to be made in this dysfunction, and $210 billion alone are spent on depression to treat adults. So keeping us overwhelmed and reactive, reaching for prescriptions, is quite literally a lucrative business. Skill number 2, financial literacy. We're not taught how interest works on a credit card, or how to make a monthly budget. Learn how to do your taxes or credit scores. Like I said, most people are failing these financial literacy quizzes just in time when they graduate to make the most important and serious financial mistakes or choices of their life. And here's some stats. 64% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. More than 50% carry credit card debt from month to month. And only 17 states, less than half in the United States, require a personal finance course to graduate high school. Now we got these 18-year-olds that are taking out thousands and thousands of dollars of loans and not understanding what compound interest is until they get that first bill when they're 25 to 30 years old. And it's just crazy to think that with money being so widespread into a person's life that affects so much, that we treat it as a side note. You know, people making smart financial decisions, if we all were making smart financial decisions, that would hurt our capitalistic society. Smart choices by consumers means less money for corporations. Now, skill number 3, career self-discovery. What if schools helped people figure out what they like doing, instead of pushing the generic message that you must go to college, otherwise you are a failure? Because I think given that a third of our lives is typically working, wouldn't it be best if people found a path that they actually enjoy? Like I said, some people are meant to build, some people are meant to fix, some people are meant to solve equations. Not everybody has to go into a college classroom. Now, I'm not trying to steer all kids away from college, but let's stop pretending that it's the only way to succeed. And then fourth and finally, my favorite skill, and the one that I'm most passionate about, resourcefulness in how to teach yourself stuff. We teach kids to memorize facts and answers, but not really so much just how to find them. When I was about 8 years old, my dad, who I don't even talk to anymore, he's a medical school professor, sat me down and taught me how to use Google at 8, around Y2K. And the point is that you don't have to wait on anyone to tell you the answer, that you can go figure it out yourself. And that changed my life because it showed me that I can learn anything on my own. And now, these days, we have no excuse. So my point is that you're not always going to have a teacher in life, but you're always going to have questions. And then again, maybe, I know this sounds kind of conspiracy theorist, but maybe we're not taught this on purpose, because if there was a population that managed their money, regulated their emotions, educated themselves, and were able to think critically, that's not a population that can be very easily sold to, or more importantly, as easily controlled. I'm not saying we throw out math and science altogether, but maybe we need to rethink and make some space for some other things that can truly and greatly benefit the quality of life as a person once they leave school. Now, the counter argument to this is that math and science and all these subjects that we are learning now, they train our brain and teach us to deeply problem solve about complex and often abstract concepts to, discipline and strengthen your mind. And I agree with that. But what if we applied those same principles to problems that actually show up in our lives, like the things that we've been talking about? This isn't just some thing that's like combining the math and science with a lot of this other emotional health and resources and learning how to, just be a better person. This is actually already being done. This is not a new concept. There is a country already that is doing a lot of this and seeing fantastic success. That country it's Finland. Finland students go to school about 20% fewer hours than United States students. And they don't take nearly as many standardized tests. They do take some at the end of high school, but a lot less focus on test taking. Teachers are highly trained and have a lot more autonomy of what they can teach. That said, within their curriculums, there's room for emotional intelligence learning, well-being and how to take care of yourself, and real-world collaboration to help them prepare. Not only that, kids get more breaks, they have longer recesses, and even have access to school psychologists. And despite all these extra things they're being taught, going to school less, having more breaks when they're in school, despite all that, Finland ranks in the top 10 globally for reading, math, and science. More importantly, Finnish students report higher life satisfaction, lower anxiety, and less school-related stress than United States students. Here in the US, we're burning kids out by middle school by drilling more of the same complex concepts into their head day after day. But in Finland, they don't see it like that. They're not raising just test takers. They're trying to raise well-rounded, emotionally healthy people. So I want to turn this over and say, what if young people in the United States, or in countries that have a kind of United States model, what if they felt more seen, more supported, and set up to thrive, not just academically, but for the other areas of their life, like emotionally and financially? Because the purpose of school should not be just to pass these tests. It should be prepare people for life. And the kids that are dropping out of school and failing, they are not the ones failing. We're failing them because we're stuck in this outdated, antiquated, old-fashioned model that is clearly broken. You know, we tell students at graduation to go out there and be somebody when we hand them that diploma, and yet they have never been given a map. And it makes you wonder if this was all by design. I know this could be a controversial kind of topic, and I clearly have a strong opinion on this, but let me know yours. Let me know if you disagree with anything or agree with anything. I hope you got a little bit out of this. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.